Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to Rob Cope, who is Director of Remember a Charity. Rob, got some questions about the current situation with legacy fundraising 4 months into the pandemic. Have you got some lessons learned yet from legacy fundraising during the pandemic and the challenges that legacy fundraisers have faced?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a massively challenging time for everyone in the sector. Quite clearly, lots of charities have really struggled, but I think there's probably a unique set of challenges and opportunities, which I'll come on to, around legacies that we've seen over the last few months. Clearly in the early days, while other areas of public fundraising obviously really sort of struggled in terms of we couldn't do the challenge events and other public fundraising, legacy fundraising actually still had a real challenge in the sensitivity. And this is something I hear all the time. I speak to charities all the time, big charities, small charities, medium-sized charities. And one thing I would say is they all face the same problem or set of problems, which hopefully people can identify with, is that how do I talk about legacies? How do I do it in a sensitive way? How do I not offend people? How do I get the engagement of the organisation behind me? How do I reach them? And in a way, these last 4 months have really kind of amplified those challenges. And we've seen a whole mix of approaches as a result of that. I think clearly the sensitivities in the early points of the pandemic were a real challenge for fundraisers, the sector as a whole. How do you talk about it? When I spoke to lots of charities, they said, they'd pause the legacy marketing, not just the smaller charities, but the big charities as well. And yet we also saw many other charities who really just focused on keeping front of mind. And I think that we know this when we look at the other areas of the commercial sector, for example. It's that whole point around, at a time of crisis, you must advertise. And I think it's the same with legacies. I think what we've seen is that you have to keep front of mind. And what we saw at Remember Charities, we switched completely. So we saw those real issues around how you talk about legacies, how you do it sensitively when sadly so many people were dying. And what we saw is we just championed the amazing work that charities did and what they were doing. And for me, I'd say that was my number one tip, was about, there are so many positive ways that the public really resonates with the public. And we saw in those 4 months, probably the highest engagement we'd ever seen in Remember Charity, just being able to tell stories.
It's actually a really quite positive view from charities as a result of that.
I think so. I mean, clearly it's a mixed bag. And I think that some charities, some fundraisers really struggle within their organisations because they were going through, staff were on furlough, they were focused on kind of real cash flow problems, and there were lots of a unique set of technical challenges around legacy. So for example, house sales, and how do you sell a house when you can't do that anymore, and so the sensitivities and the challenges around that, and some of the practical problems also with solicitors not being able to process those estates in the normal way. So there are all those things I think that legacies probably face in a way that probably other areas of fundraising, it doesn't have so many different drivers perhaps as the legacies do. But we definitely saw a real positive for those charities who were willing to tell their story. And I think that's the thing. And we know this with legacies. It's all about the framing. It's about how you ask it, but telling the story in an uplifting, positive way. And every charity has got a positive story to tell. And we saw that those charities who did it in a really sort of positive way about how they're responding to the crisis, how they're saying, look, it's not perfect, we're doing our best. Charities are there in a time of crisis. And we know from recent public polling that the public really respond to that. They see that as that unique place that charities, and I guess in a way that's put a spotlight on the importance of the sector.
And the public was really hungry for positive stories.
Yeah.
So legacy giving or legacy interest has certainly risen. Has it risen across the board? I remember Hospice UK saying there were lots of a huge boost in inquiries about leaving a legacy or writing a charitable bequest.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, for example, doubling the number of inquiries online. People researching on Remember Charities site about how to write a will, how to make a will. Doubled very quickly. And I think we've seen that in many other areas where you're staying front of mind, telling stories, being positive, not putting legacies at the start of a message, but actually just saying that actually legacies is one of the ways you can support your favourite causes at this difficult time. And I think what we've seen, and I think this is true throughout probably the last 20 years of legacy fundraising, those who invest, those who are loud about legacies, as we all say within the sector, they are the ones who will do well in a very competitive market. And I think that's the key. It's a very competitive market. And people think that obviously legacies just come in, and that's just not true. And we know as fundraisers, you have to ask in the right way. But we know that those people who are happy to tell their stories and are able to show where they fit, continue to do well. But certainly we saw a big surge in online will writing as well, and we've seen that continue to grow.
And what would you see as the significance of legacy income in the sector's recovery from the current funding crisis?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, I've reflected a lot on this. We've all been dealing with a huge amount of change. I'm here at home and doing an interview here with my wardrobe behind me, and we're all kind of dealing with these different changes, and my kids in the other rooms going, "Be quiet," or maybe I should just let them in and let it go viral. I don't know. But I think what we have seen is that if you think about the last 4 months, we've seen kind of door-to-door street fundraising having to stop. We've had to see challenge events stop. All the areas of public fundraising stop, paused. And, it's very, very, very challenging circumstances. So cash flow is dried up for most charities. They've had to make huge changes. But what we've seen is that charities who've done well from legacies, actually that's often the lifeblood that's kept them going, that kept the frontline services going. That would be my clear message to the trustees who are watching this, to the finance directors who are questioning about should we invest in legacies. It shows the uncertainty of the world, and legacies have got to be right at the heart of the financial resilience of your organisation.
Yeah. What about for charities that maybe have scaled back on promoting the importance of legacy giving? How would you suggest that they start opening up the conversation again once more?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's very easy for me running Remember Charity to say, support and continue around legacies, and people say, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? But I think there are, irrespective of how many kind of constraints there are on people's budgets, and of course people have to make difficult choices, there are some very simple things that not charities should do, they must do, in my view. They must continue to promote legacies as a way to give. They must think about all their channels. So for example, if you're a small charity, you can find a story. You can find a story to tell and be relevant. Why are you relevant in this new world? I was hoping never to say that, but how are you relevant to your supporters? Perhaps even more so now. So being able to tell that through all the channels, email broadcasts or whatever it is, there are some relatively simple, cheap ways that you can do to continue to talk about legacies. And even for those larger charities, I think it's very easy for charities to scale back in all areas of fundraising, and we understand why they need to do that. But we mustn't lose that importance of creating the mix and about retaining the importance of being loud about a very important area of the sector's future health. So I think that, that also what we see that continues to be true across all sizes of organisations is the importance of internal championing and being able to talk to colleagues, maybe have a trustee champion. You know, I was a trustee of a charity for many years, and I was the champion for legacies. And having someone who can fight your corner and really kind of being able to say, do you know what, we might have to be scaling back at the moment, but we shouldn't. Let's make sure that we keep drip feeding the importance of legacies, because if we don't, your market share will reduce. You will get squeezed out of the market. And we know, obviously, that as the boomers sadly die off, that there is a huge transfer of wealth, and you need to be part of it. Every charity needs to be part of it.
And lots of charities have a good opportunity coming up. You've got Remember a Charity Week coming up next month. Do you want to say why that's particularly important this year above all others?
Yeah, I mean, it was a funny one because back in March, April, we were questioning, you know, was Remember Charity Week going to happen? You know, I genuinely thought that if it happened, it wouldn't happen in September. Yeah. You know, so it was and that would be the first time that would have ever happened. And it was a kind of a big reflection, but huge credit to our members, actually, of all different shapes and sizes, who, you know, overwhelmingly said, do you know what, we must do it now. And I'm really delighted. I mean, of course I always want to get out there. Of course I always want to be on the front foot. You know, we have to be positive, we have to be relevant, we have to be front of mind. And, you know, if there ever was a time when something like a collaborative effort to remind the public about the importance of giving to charities, it's now. So I'm so looking forward to September. I'm so looking forward to being able to get that message out there and talk about it so positively. I think it's going to, you know, huge thanks to all the charities who got behind it this year, and also all the wider sector as well.
Can you remind us the week? What are the dates of Remember Charity Week?
Yeah, so Remember Charity Week, it's the week of the 7th of September. And we pulled off an amazing queue, I think. We managed to secure the Wombles. So for those who are of a certain age, the 70s show, we brought them back a full license for 2 years, actually. So we'll be able to use them for 2 years. And the huge thanks as well go to the team at the Wombles, who said, we don't just want to create a film for Remember Charity. We want to create a film that's bespoke for every member charity of Remember Charity. So we've created a branded film, a unique film for every member, which I think is a lovely thing. And so big charities, medium-sized charities, small charities, you know, they're just being able to make it their own. And I think that's what's really going to be really nice, because that feels like our gift to them is, you know, at a time where they're really struggling, our gift to them to be able to get out there, be on the front foot, and remind people about the wonderful work they do.
That's very good. So you're going to end up recycling and reusing the Wombles. That is a very
very good
charity. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Rob Cope. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.